Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 1010 News, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. So, school started. I hope it wasn't all that painful for y'all. Now, I need to get some homework done so I don't pull an all-nighter tomorrow. So, let's get the news motoring. Terrible news to start with this week. CBS affiliate WDBJ TV reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward were killed by a gunman on live television in Virginia. The gunman fled the scene, disgustingly uploaded his recording of the murders on social media, and was found dead after a manhunt. Investigation revealed that the shooter was Vester Lee Flanagan II, a 41-year-old man who had worked for the same TV station as his victims, albeit with the pseudonym Bryce Williams. Flanagan was fired from the station for causing friction in the workplace, and it seems that the attack was a revenge. His manifesto, which he sent to ABC News, reveals that he had been confronted with hostility and harassment for being a homosexual African American. What's really disturbing is that he was inspired by the Charleston church shooting massacre, and that a man often described as, according to CBS interviews with Flanagan's peers, an unhappy man who was difficult to work with, could legally purchase two high-powered Glock pistols on a whim. Also today in gun violence, Harris County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Goforth was murdered while filling up his patrol car in the Houston gas station. Fortunately, the suspect was arrested. But how many more years will it take to realize that guns came a long way from muskets? I personally don't know. Hopefully the officials know, but I don't think they know either. More difficulties with journalists in Egypt, as three journalists from Al Jazeera were sentenced for 3 years in prison for allegedly working with the Muslim Brotherhood, spreading false news, and not being a journalist at all, apparently. The reasoning has not been released to the public yet, and many deemed the verdict as a direct attack against freedom of the press. CNN had reported that there was a new anti-terrorism law in Egypt in June that makes publishing news that contradicts the official version of events in terror-related cases a crime. It's likely that this particular law could have something to do with the trial of these three men. So, let me get this straight before I go into this news. I hate it when the media gives too much attention to some pandas in a random zoo, or Donald Trump while Sanders is catching up to Clinton and Biden seems to be dipping his toes into the election. Also, don't ask me who I support in the election because you all know the name starts with D's and ends with nuts. But, continuing with the theme of journalists getting assaulted, Donald Trump. Jorge Ramos, a Univision anchor, and basically the Anderson Cooper or Scott Pelley of the Spanish-speaking anchors in the United States, was escorted out of a press conference with Donald Trump when he stood up to ask a question without being called on, to which Trump told him to sit down and go back to Univision before calling security. He was admitted back in after a time. So standing up without being called on in a press conference is a touch uncalled for. It's certainly not in my manner book if I become a journalist, but demeaning the anchor and having security drag the man out, what kind of superiority complex do you need to have? My summer with some larger cable news networks did let me learn firsthand that the press isn't always welcomed. We were accosted more than just a few times by bystanders and officials, but I can vouch that the media can be full of many good men and women who dedicate themselves to tirelessly deliver millions of people a window to view through which to view the rest of the world. That window can often be tainted and skewed, yes, but it's the freedom to have it all and respecting the exercise of the freedom that counts. So remember that. Well, first good news of the day, Thai authorities finally have a suspect under custody for the bombing attack that killed 20 civilians in the Bangkok shrine. He is not, however, the man in the police sketches who allegedly carried the bombs. The man, according to police spokesman Lieutenant General Prawit Tavorsiri, is part of the network that carried out the two bomb incidents. Police discovered the fake Turkish passports and ball bearings that were used in the bomb attacks in the suspect's apartment. Most of the attack still remains a mystery. Motives and larger associations are still unaccounted for. Hopefully this arrest will shed more light on this tragedy. Foreign terrorism is being considered as a factor in the attacks. Many believe such foreign attacks are more likely in Europe. Indeed, a Moroccan gunman had been subdued in a French train by 3 American men quite recently. However, Europe is dealing with something that fortunately does not pose such a threat to its people, but is just as morbid. Tens of thousands of migrants traveling from the war-torn nations of the Middle East, the Balkans, Italy, France, and Germany, and England. The migrants have to face deadly obstacles all along the way. A figure released by the International Organization for Migration, yes, there is such a thing, shows that more than 2,370 people have been killed this year alone trying to reach Europe. Now, last year's figure was a little over 3,000. There have been many deaths in overland routes when migrants are forced to travel in container trucks, over barbed wire, and through dark tunnels. The most dangerous route, on the other hand, is across the Mediterranean Sea, where migrants are crammed onto poorly maintained and often undersized boats to sail to Italy and the Balkans. Just recently, at least 112 died when such a boat capsized off the coast of Libya. Nearly 200 managed to be rescued, but dozens are still missing. We all know that stability in those regions is the only way to permanently stop the deadly migrations, but for now, all we can do is drop more bombs. Turkey carried out its first official attacks on ISIS today after announcing that they would be a part of the US-led coalition on Monday. They have had some attacks last month, but those were not as a part of the alliance that is currently attacking the extremist group. Good news is that the United States can mount more air raids from bases in Turkey, which saves a lot of fuel as Turkey is a stone's throw from ISIS-held territories in Syria and Iraq. Bad news is that Turkey still has a lot of unresolved beef with Kurdish forces in Iraq, which, along with joint Iranian-Iraqi personnel, are doing the brunt of the land fighting with ISIS. Maybe the Turks and Kurds can resolve their differences against their common enemy, but I'm being optimistic here. Hey, but the Iraqis and Iranians are working together, so why not Turks and Kurds? Who knows? Now, the next time you see your trash man driving past to pick up your rubbish, make sure to wave to him or at least be nice to keep your trash cans lined up along the curbside well, okay? You got me? Alright. In Lebanon, thousands have been gathering in Beirut to protest against the government for poor management of the citizens' trash. This is why I'm giving you the advice. Take it to heart. In case you don't get the full picture of the extent of the trash crisis there, here's an actual picture of the trash situation in Lebanon. Yeah, you don't want that on the 405 here. The protests are not just about the trash, it is also against the Lebanese government's alleged corruption and dysfunction. Fortunately, the protests were mostly peaceful. This last week was an especially hectic one if you're into investing. China's economy and currency were relatively struggling for the past few weeks, and American stocks did a nosedive early this week out of fear of such downturns. Also, there are also fears that the Federal Reserve might raise interest rates after a decade of low rates to save the then only improving economy. Don't worry too much, the stocks recovered at least some of what it lost in the latter half of the week and stabilized yesterday to mark the end of the trading week. Tropical storm Erica was downgraded from hurricane status this morning, but it is still a pretty powerful tropical storm. Florida is expected to be smacked in the face with this one, so people have been taking precautions. Many Americans in the region are taking no chances with such storms and hurricanes, especially after what happened in New Orleans exactly 10 years ago today. Hurricane Katrina. Well, 10 years ago, throughout the week, if you count all the disasters and stuff. Nearly 2,000 died, 1 million were displaced, and 80% of the city was underwater. The city is still recovering from the storm, and it showed the municipal, state, and federal government's lack of preparation to withstand and recover from such disasters. This week was one of both mourning and celebration of the storm that showed that New Orleans cannot be broken. Woo! Finally, for tonight's science news, New Horizons, again. Above, you see the graphic made by compiling and combining the images that the probe took during its brush with history when it flew by Pluto. Now it's going beyond what it was traditionally thought of as a solar system's final frontier by setting its sight on 2014 MU69 or PT1, PT standing for potential target. Real creative, I know. It's a small, cold world in the Kuiper Belt, and scientists still have not agreed on its composition and size because the body is so small. The probe will reach its target on New Year's Day 2019. I guess they set the date like that so that the workers over at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab can get even more drunk on that day or something. I don't know, scientists, you can't understand them. Anyways, that was the 1010 news of the week. I'm Andy Hong. Today was just a general 1010 with me just blabbering over at the anchor desk. Next week will be for sure more exciting when we have a guest speaker over, which I personally have been looking for months. So hopefully that goes to plan. Hopefully there's no schedule changes. So stay in tune and make sure to leave a like or subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. And we'll be back next week with more of your top 10 news in 10 minutes. Stay educated.